Today we're exploring the topic of trypophobia and painting a portrait. Well, hello there, I'm Detroit. If this is your first time, welcome to the Detroit Variety channel. The whole team is very glad you decided to watch. Unfortunately, this might not be the best video to start watching my art, especially if you are trypophobic. Trypophobia is the irrational fear of repetitive patterns of small holes, like honeycombs or pores. Here's a mild example. Now, if that's not your jam, I encourage you to click on the link in the corner. It's a much more normal video. If you're still here but you don't really like it, here's the timestamp of when you have to stop watching. In the meantime, I'm just painting a normal portrait in Photoshop. In fact, this portrait couldn't be more normal. It's so normal that I wasn't supposed to make it a video. I started recording my screen and just sketched the face. This was an experiment on painting styles, on which I'll touch more later. Like, I wouldn't make a video with just a half-assed portrait, for a few reasons. First, I already did that. But then again, with that other drawing I wanted to tell you how I practice portraits. Secondly, this portrait is a bit boring. It's only above the shoulders, facing straight on, with long straight hair. Inside my usual repertoire, this is certainly what I'm most comfortable with. The reference I'm using even has red hair. This is basically just a worse version of this drawing commission I did a while back. There is no wacky prompt like having a monstrous body part, for example, which is something I do enjoy a lot. So it wasn't supposed to be a video. While I was painting, I thought, hey, maybe I can make this really weird. That was a good idea. Maybe I can make it so 17% out of potential viewers will definitely not watch this? That was not such a great idea. But anyway, here we are, and we can talk about the painting process. After I was satisfied with the sketch, which again was only for me and not for a video in the beginning, I turned the sketching layer style to overlay, so that I would see the sketch well even on the relatively dark background. I started with the background to make sure the woman would fit nicely into it, the lighting was coherent, and so on. For example, the rosy tone on the left indicated the origin of a backlight. Although, to be fair, I didn't really apply any sort of directional lighting. I did it kinda randomly, to be honest. The only indication I gave myself for the light are the squigglies on the right of the hair, where the light will reflect a bit. After the background, I used the lasso tool to select the face, then the neck, the hair and the shoulders on different layers. These are my 4 flats, the layers I'll use as a base for the painting. Every subsequent layer will rest on top as clipping masks, and so when I'm shading the face, for example, I want color outside the flat layer. Depending on the artwork I'm making, I might use a different number of flat layers, but these 4 are my most common. Oh, and the background of course, but that goes without saying. Before, I used to do a skin layer, so that would include the face and the neck. But the neck is always lit a bit differently due to being below the chin, so now it has its own separate layer. If I ever need to merge the two and blend them a bit, I'll do that on another layer that sits on top of the other two. Anyway, this is pretty basic stuff. What I wanted to talk about is the style of the painting. The brush that I'm using is a large chalk brush that I downloaded for free somewhere years ago. Its shape is a rectangle because today I want to shade without using a soft brush. I tend to overblend sometimes and I would rather not blend enough. It gives more style to the painting and it's something I want to add to my many different styles I can replicate. This is why I practice. The texture of the brush is very nice though. It's a bit complex and yet it reacts quite simply with itself on different passes. I would just recommend avoiding changing the size too much. Like the grain of the brush won't match if you change its size, which is why it's also a good exercise for hand control, and why you can't be too precious with it. At first I started shading with very sanguine tones, deep reds, and then I slowly refined the skin tone, but not too much. Remember, this is an exercise of style. It's all supposed to look a bit dirty. It's at this point that I decided in my head that at the last moment I would add holes on her skin, and make this portrait a trypophobic nightmare. After shading the hair and adding the green eyes is when the holes appear. Now, I don't personally mind trypophobic stuff. It doesn't make me uncomfortable or anything. Even still, I don't think it would affected the drawing if it did. There is something about drawing it yourself that changes it. You're doing it yourself so it doesn't affect you. It's kinda like tickling. It's impossible to tickle yourself. For example, I have a phobia of caterpillars. Don't ask me why. And yet, I can draw a pretty disgusting caterpillar and it wouldn't affect me, since I drew it. It's like drawing NSFW stuff. It's not really exciting, since it's just another aspect of working in that sense. Anyway, back to the holes. First tip, if you want to do something trypophobia inducing, patterning. The basic assortment of holes is hexagonal, so make one circle and then 6 evenly spaced circles around it. Do that for every single one and that's it. Secondly, transitions. The holes here don't cover the entire face. When the pattern stops, I purposefully made the holes smaller, but with the same spacing, as if the whole pattern was slowly taking over the skin of that lady. Now, on the holes themselves. To give the impression of depth, I colored one side of the holes with a lighter shade. It's like the light reflects a bit on the side by opposition to the middle where it doesn't really reach. To add more detail, I added a tinge of yellow in the middle of every hole. Then, depending on where the hole was located, I changed the opacity of the yellow dots. You don't see them as clearly on the parts where the face is in shadows. By the end of the drawing, I was pretty satisfied with it. I like the shading. I like the deep green eyes. I also like the expression of the woman looking straight at you. I wasn't a fan of the hair being almost the same color as the skin. Like, the green eyes being the only contrasting thing was a bit much, so I made the hair slightly pink. And I think it's done. I really thank you for watching this video. I enjoyed the process and I wanted to share it, even though the content was very polarizing to some extent. Like the video and comment with ideas of strange drawings you would like to see me attempt to draw, and subscribe of course. Share this video if you really want to help me, and check out my social media in the description. My content is free to watch, but you can buy me a coffee if you want. I'm Detroit and I drew holes today. Bye!